Give me a child until the age of 7, and I will give you the man.
Our series will take you on a journey of discovery, a journey that will help us unlock the mystery that is concealed within each child's development. A journey that reveals the critical role this development plays in the formation of man. Each adult has not always been a grown-up person. It was the child who constructed the adult personality. The International Baccalaureate Creativity, Action and Service Programme is just part and parcel of the everyday lives of these Montessori children. There are no rewards for this activity. For them, the reward is what they feel as they so unobtrusively do what they have chosen to do. They see the need. They fulfill the desire to fulfill the need, thus creating them in the process.
Well, CAS stands for Creativity, Activity and Service, and you have to do a minimum 150 hours altogether of CAS over the 2 years. You have to do 50 of each at least.
And what have you chosen to do? Do you have a choice of what you can do?
Yes. For activity I'm doing jiu-jitsu and archery, which I'm continuing, but you can also do shorter activities just for a week or so. And for service I'm working at the Cat Haven.
Wonderful. And how often is that?
Well, I go every 2 weeks, every second week, because Amanda goes the other week.
Amanda Essen and Megan Beasley have been with you now for a number of weeks.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you're finding them?
They are wonderful girls. We have been so thrilled to have them. It's hard to get girls involved with archery, and it's wonderful to have them. They are so enthusiastic. They really are lovely girls. They listen to what you're telling them, which is nice. They're keen. They work hard, and they're excellent archers. I know they're only doing this as part of their program. I'm really hoping that they'll enjoy it enough that they want to keep going, because they really are great archers, and they have fun. I mean, they're lovely girls. They're bright and bubbly. They turn up. They always have a great deal of fun, which is what we're about here, I think. We want to teach them to do archery, but we also want them to have a great deal of fun, which I think they're really doing. Absolutely. They're lovely people. So they come on from another voluntary thing that they do, and then they come on to us each week. Yeah.
So we all went out to a farm in Meriden, I think it was, and helped a farmer out there plant seeds in the fields. We planted an entire field in a weekend, I think it was, or something. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was really good.
There is a further requirement in the diploma that a course is taken in the theory of knowledge.
Yes, I understand that's very unique to...
Absolutely, it's completely unique to the IB, and it's a philosophical course, and it's asking the students to consider how it is, or whether it is, that we know what we know. And they look at that in the context of their different subject areas over the time. The third component, which is unique to the IB, is the extended essay, which is a work piece of about 4,000 words, which the student is required to do in a subject of his or her own choosing.
Wow.
And this is an opportunity for a really deep investigation of something which deeply interests someone, and that is...
When children leave the Montessori environment, they leave with distinct advantages. We are told by many people that Montessori students possess self-esteem and confidence, and always demonstrate independence beyond their years. They are strongly self-motivated and have keen interest in learning. Socially, they are just well because they are used to working closely with their peers and sharing ideas with them.
We still have a friend. She's a Dutch lady who was brought up in Holland, and she had 2 children, and they had started off in the Montessori system, and we'd always looked at those children and thought, gee, they're confident, they're bright, they're assertive without being obnoxious. They were just really well-rounded children. Happy, yes. Well-rounded children, and I've always looked at those 2 children and thought, that's what I want for mine. And now I've got a choice. I'm living in an area where we've got a choice.
The first thing that struck me here was it just made me feel it's not a school. I didn't get the feeling that I was in a school, because to me a school was so rigid and so, structured in so many ways. And I just walked into this place which was so natural and so friendly. But the first thing really that struck me here was the students use the Christian name when they refer to the personnel here, to the teachers, and that was something I just couldn't get over, that such a thing can happen in a school. But that was the first thing that made me so comfortable, and I felt I could just relate to them in such a down-to-earth way, or such a friendly way. We were made to feel, you say just the right things in front of your teacher, or do the right thing with your teacher. But the first thing here was, where is the teacher? Even in the classroom, the teacher doesn't, you don't really walk in and expect to see you expect to see the teacher sitting at a desk, but it doesn't happen here.
No. Well, I'm just thinking of talking to you about the soccer. I'll tell you this one. Of course, children play soccer a lot because it was easy, you just need a ball. Yes. And there's such a few number of kids, and anyone could play age 5 to 12, which was the range. And Erin, our youngest, was about 8, and I think she considered herself the second best soccer player. She knew her brother was better. So there were probably others, but she wouldn't admit that. And when they had a soccer carnival in the northern suburbs, Montessori, kids asked if they could go in it. Of course, Mrs. Starker said yes, if that's what you want to do. And so they picked up the team, and it ranged from Jerome, I think, who was 12, he was the captain, and Erin was 8, and I think the rest of the kids were 6 and 5 and 10. I mean, the most motley looking crew. And we went off to watch this soccer match, and first of all, we had to get permission for Erin to play, because she was a girl.
Oh, of course.
So Mrs. Dyker just sent Erin off to see the manager of the Soccer Federation, who I must have nearly fainted when this little 8-year-old came in and said, well, of course I have to play. I'm the second best player. And he just sort of fell apart, and she played, and we went and saw the match. Well, I have never laughed so much in all my life. This little funny team, some of them are 5, and these huge big 12-year-old kids, all soccer players in all the rest of the carnival. And our little team ran on, they were so excited. 11 of them, little ants running all over the field. Wherever the ball was, there were 11 little kids, and of course the other teams couldn't get any of their systems going. But then after about a quarter of an hour, they just all had it. And they were all yelling out, because Jerome was always called Omi, Omi, take me off! Omi, take me off! And they held this team, a very good team, to 0-0 at half time. But then, of course, they all collapsed, and they didn't win any, but they didn't care. But it was absolutely wonderful, and everybody who was barracking were ending up barracking for the Montessori team, because they were so hopeless, but they were just so keen.
My husband is a mathematics teacher here in Montessori. He has been here in this school since 1996. And every day when he came back home, he told me a lot about his students, how they love them, how their behavior, how their attitude. And he told me he hasn't seen any children or student like that anywhere. Yes. Because he has been a teacher for 34 years.
Yes. I think basically their social skills were pretty good, right? Because they had mixed with a range of ages, and including adults. Yes. And they were used to conversing with adults as well as conversing with children who were much younger. So that I don't think they ever had any social problems. As far as work goes, I think they were probably in advance of most of their classmates in most areas. And where they weren't, where they had problems, like my older daughter had some problems with spelling. Yes. But she was able to accept that in quite a mature way
Yes, and say this is a problem I have and I have to deal with it and develop strategies to do that.
Yes. The International Baccalaureate encourages interaction with other countries and cultures through international conferences and field trips. After a recent trip to Canada by several of the IB students from Montessori Kingsley, the host in Toronto wrote, "I would like to say that the boys were wonderful house guests. They were polite, considerate, and even spent time chatting with the old folks, Ruben and me. If this is how they are at home, I would like for you to send your secrets on parenthood."
The International Baccalaureate trip to Brisbane, that was exceptionally good. I really enjoyed that. Even just to have somebody else to talk to that was doing the same course as you, that's probably one thing I found hard when I was younger, is all your friends are doing TE, and you say, "Oh, I'm doing International Baccalaureate," and they go, "What are you doing?" They don't know. It's not very well known in Western Australia especially. It's more in the eastern states. I found a lot of people in Brisbane and especially, but meeting people from all over the world and just being able to converse with them and communicate on that one level, it was just fantastic. You know, it was the same atmosphere as a Montessori school. We were all sort of IBs people, and we all just sort of came together and we had that in common, if nothing else. So no, that was a very good trip. I enjoyed that immensely.
Can I take you back to your Montessori education? Has it helped you in any way to the level that you're at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. The people skills, learning to deal with people, everyday communicational skills, things like this. As a manager in Action, I find a lot of people that we get don't have the people skills.
How did you develop those skills?
Just through interaction with other children, teachers. It's a very personal relationship with your teachers, especially in the younger years. They're more your friend than your teacher. They're always there for you. If you've got a problem, you can go to them. You know that you're not going to get into trouble. It's not like that. It's more, let's work through the problem, let's find the solution rather than focusing on the negative. It's very refreshing.
When I was here, there was me, Sonia and Melanie, and we were very close and we used to do a lot of work together. And I think one of the things is being able to talk to each other and figure out what you're doing and where you are. And when I'm at work, it's very much a team effort. Everyone has to be 110% on the ball, and you really have to work together to get it done, because otherwise it doesn't happen, because I rely on someone getting something else ready. Right. And all that interaction and all that talking has to happen, and if it doesn't, you just stuff up and you can't afford to.
I think it's taught me to think differently towards problems rather than focusing on the negative aspects of the problem. I can look at it from a different angle, step back and say, hang on a minute, if we do this or if we change this, then it'll work. And just freedom of thought, I think, and freedom to express yourself and express yourself well. Yeah.
How do you see this system of education?
Normal.
Montessori students do well at university because they are accustomed to making their own choices out of their own interest.
I'm doing second year UWA. This year coming up starts the end of February.
Doing
science.
Should we ask?
Yeah, first year I did chem, physics, maths and computer science, all the hard 100s. Yeah, and I dropped maths and physics. I don't actually study very much, but I don't actually find I have to write at this stage. I will have to start this year probably. That's what I've been saying since year 10 actually.
Studying a double degree of electrical engineering and computer science. So yeah.
How are you finding it? Double degree.
Getting harder. First year was pretty crazy, but yeah, now they're starting to put the work in, so yeah, it's lots of maths, so not enjoying that too much, but yeah, other parts of it are pretty good.
And now I'm
currently at East Academy University studying computer science. If you like South, it's not as difficult, and yeah, I'm enjoying it. I come back once a week and teach guitar to a few of the students that are interested, and that's good fun. It's really good because sort of takes you back to what it was like when you were there, and I think also being relatively young, very young, and yeah, they seem to relate as well. They don't always get sort of someone who's in uni, and it's good we can talk pretty much on the same level still.
Well, I was admitted to UWA Arts faculty, and I've taken languages there, European Studies and History. For most of them, for the languages I want to do the usual 3 years, and I want to try and do honours for history.
Oh, okay, I just started a doctorate of forensic psychology. So I finished my undergraduate last year, and that was great, but I'm really enjoying the doctorate because we get a lot more practical experience, and I've just started my first practical placement, so I'll be seeing clients next week. Yeah. Oh, I'm loving it, I really am. I couldn't have chosen a better course. I mean, the workload is huge, it really is, as you'd expect at a postgraduate level, but I'm loving it, so.
Well, I'm back in uni, I'm back at studying. Yeah, I'm a full-time student at UWA doing psychology, following Michelle's footsteps, coincidentally. Yep, I'm loving what I'm doing, but as she was saying, it's very general at this moment because it's just an undergrad, and yeah, I want to do something like counselling or clinical or forensic even psychology. I want to keep my options open, but definitely I want to work in a field where I can help people, and I think psychology or social work is a good field. Yes, that's what I want to do.
I started doing a general science degree at UWA because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and swapped and finished my degree at ECU. I actually found second year at UWA fairly well, and as soon as someone tells me I can't do something, that's instantly what I wanted to do. So I finished at ECU and then went back to UWA to do honours, and they actually gave me a scholarship because I was coming from another university to do honours at UWA, so I thank them very much and settled in. And I just got my first class honours in the Department of Pathology doing molecular biology type stuff, and I'm now doing my doctorate of philosophy also in pathology, and it's just working at that.
Dr. Montessori mentions that we should never forget that we do not develop only at the university, but begin our mental growth at birth and pursue it with greatest intensity during our first 3 years of the child's life. Look at the child at birth and then the child at 3. What an enormous change has taken place, and this all took place not because adults said so. Education should not be only of imparting knowledge, but must seek the release of all human potential. The happiness and the success of these Montessori students in the outside world should convince people that the right path is being followed.
A guitarist, obviously, in the band, and I actually play one of the bass player in the band, Gareth McGrillen, and he used to come to Montessori as well, and through the band we kept in through the band we sort of kept in touch, and we still do, and yeah, we're doing a few projects together with the band, and we also just hang out as friends.
Where do you play?
As well. We play around, various venues, pubs. We've even done youth festivals, concerts, and we went down to Denmark just recently and did a show there.
So I'm doing an awful lot of dancing at the moment.
What type of dancing?
Ballroom, Latin and jive.
Wow. Outside of studies.
And I've just started doing Argentinian tango as well.
And you have it in
At a very early age, I started soccer and football and all these other sports outside of school. And baseball has probably been the biggest sport that I've been playing recently, and I've been in state teams and gone away to Alice Springs and Adelaide and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's enjoyable. I think that that's a good thing really, whereas you can come here, make friends, and then, you know, do your schoolwork, whereas, you know, when you're outside of school, then you can sort of do your sports and all that sort of thing. It's more of a relaxing time for me, whereas I think in other schools you sort of play sports in the school and that. I don't think I enjoy that as much as sort of sports. It's sort of my, you know, time off in a way from schoolwork. So yeah, I enjoy that.
And jiu-jitsu I've been doing for up to 5 years.
And do you have a level? You have a category? Or?
Yes, I'm blue belt now, which is, I think, the 4th adult belt. They have something like 6 children's belts and then the adult belts.
I do martial arts. I'm a first dan at the moment, black belt. And some of the time I used to teach there, the smaller kids. So I might be doing that as my service.
How long have you been doing martial arts?
About 4 years, 5 years. Longer. Yeah, maybe longer.
Deva, what are your out of school interests?
Same. I'm doing the same things here.
At what level?
Black belt.
I came to Montessori when I was 11 years old. I was in year 4. I came because I wasn't really happy with my old school, and I found it a much more relaxed environment, and I could go at my own pace, I guess. I'm in year 10 right now. I've got 1 term left till I'll be doing the IB. I think I'm going to do the full diploma and hopefully go through to university from that. My outside interests are speed skating, cricket and piano. Speed skating is my favourite sport out of the 3. I recently represented WA in the National Speed Skating Championships. We came 2nd overall and I got some golds and silvers, and I was happy with that.
I do calisthenics, which most people haven't heard of. It's sort of a mixture of everything, basically. Gymnastics, ballet, all that sort of stuff. At the moment I'm in the senior class, and I also teach the junior 2 class, which is the 9 to 12-year-olds. So, yeah. I've been in 2 state teams. Both times we went to Melbourne. Yeah, that was great, but it's really stressful. So the good thing I found about doing that while I'm at this school is the teachers are always encouraging me. Out of the schools, my friends that were doing it at the same time as me are saying, oh, teachers giving us so much homework, there's so much pressure. Whereas my teachers here were saying, we'll take a bit of a time off while you're doing it and do a bit more when you get back. And that was really a big help.
At the moment, at uni, I'm deferred, so I'm not going to be looking as a graded student at the moment, which is unfortunate. But deferred as my studies are deferred, but I'm still carrying on with photography on my own pace. I'm working full-time at a restaurant at the moment. I've just been promoted to duty manager position. Going very well. I'm starting to decide that the hospitality industry maybe not be the place for myself, but you know, it's a career at the moment and it's going quite well.
While the demands of the International Baccalaureate courses are such that the students must spend most of their time in lessons or studying, there are occasions when these involve field trips or outings of some kind. There are opportunities for both students and teachers to go out and expand their horizons, physically as well as intellectually. While it was not deliberate, the International Baccalaureate staff at the Montessori School Kingsley come from diverse backgrounds, including Scottish, Egyptian, Mauritian, Indian, German, Australian and Italian. One of the world's national leaders, one of the foremost spiritual and political leaders of the 1900s, Mohandas Gandhi, said,
"Education must become coextensive with life. The central point of education must be the defense of life."
Also in the 1900s, Dr. Montessori herself maintained, education is an aid to life. How did you first become exposed to the Montessori philosophy of education?
I was invited to have a look at a documentary episode when I was working with a community television organisation, and I was so impressed with what I saw that it inspired me to get involved in the rest of the programs. But what basically inspired me was a sign on a wall that said, "Help me to do it myself." I thought, how independent is that? What a wonderful motto to have for children. And that was how I got involved.
Okay, Alan, what is it about the Montessori education that inspired you?
First of all, it was the respect which is shown between students themselves, between students and the teacher, and between the teacher and the students. This mutual respect that seems to be endemic in all the Montessori classes. The first thing I noticed was the size of the furniture. It's different in the various classes in the school. It's most disrespectful to ask a student to work on a piece of equipment with some furniture which is far too small, which is so large that the poor child has got to physically injure themselves to clamber on top of it. And with the movement which is involved in a Montessori class, to get onto and off of a chair, to have it twice the size that it ought to be, is most disrespectful. I thought that was wonderful. Little things like even mats on the floor for the children. Even though it's a fully carpeted floor in some places, the mats are still placed down there. That gives the child some working area, that child's working area. It's not violated by the other children. They respect that that square metre belongs to Bobby, Johnny, Mary, or whoever it might be. They respect that, and the child goes on, does his or her own job at his or her own pace, and everyone's quite happy about it. I was so impressed, I joined the school, and I'm studying full-time, so yes, it's made a change in my life, and hopefully it'll help me to make a change in other people's lives. Yes, it's the Montessori school at Kingsley in Western Australia. It's a university level course, 3 years of it. Very exciting and very interesting. I've been doing it now for about 2 months, and I can't wait for the next class. I come from a media background, radio, television, and it was, like I said, it was through the media that I was introduced to the Montessori method and the school and CTV and yourself. And it was through the media that I found it, and it's, I think with some of the things I learnt in the media, I'll be able to pass on some of that information, some of those life's experiences. And if I could just relate one life experience of mine.
Please, please. When
I was 14, 15, at a government school, I really wanted to do, I needed to do, Maths 2 and 3 as they were called in those days. The headmaster said, "No, you can't. We don't have enough equipment. We don't have the teachers, we don't have the desks, we don't have the place." Well, basically they didn't have the interest. So being 15 and brash, I said, okay, I'll do it myself. So for 2 years I taught myself Maths 2 and 3 and passed.
Wonderful.
I went to a different school I never looked back and I never went back. Yes, I can see the differences as I see them. One of the things I was most impressed with was the lack of rows and columns of students, each one focusing on at one point at the front of the class, and that point being the teacher. And each one, probably not deliberately, but it's the way it happens, is they become facsimiles of each other. I think that's awful. I think that we don't have to so much teach the child as to give the child the opportunity to develop what is innately in that child already. It comes with the child at birth and the first 3 years. By the time we get to 3, all the sensorial experiences that we've had, the environment, we don't need somebody to fill our head with the information. We need to be given the opportunity to use what's already in there to go further ahead. And even worse is the idea of having rows of children becoming a facsimile of the teacher himself or herself. Children do things for the benefit or for the satisfaction of doing the job well, as I have found out, as I have observed. They don't do it for a pat on the back from the teacher, and they certainly don't do it for a kick in the tail. They do it for very different reasons, and that's the main difference that I can see so far. There are many, many more. From a personal point of view, I always went about 30% worse off in an exam than I did in homework. It was just that situation put me so much under pressure. And surprisingly, in the media, when I was live, I did it 30% better. When I sat down and did it as a prepared piece of work, it was awful. But in exams, I just thought, well, I'm telling the teacher what they want to hear, that I happen to know at this point in time. I might walk out of the classroom and think, why didn't I think of that? How come I forgot that? Can I go back and do it again? Well, you can't go back and do it again. In life, in most things, you can go back and do it again. Particularly with the mathematics equipment, how they have been so wonderfully designed. The isolation of difficulty so that each piece is graded to learn one thing at a time. The control of error. The student can see that, hey, it hasn't turned out quite as it should have, but I can see that. I don't need anyone to tell me that. So disassemble the whole thing and try again. Doesn't need a teacher to come along and say, do it again. By the time the teacher does that, the child has disassembled it and is halfway back to doing it. It might take all day, but with that control of error, that's learning. It's learning by discovery through observation. And I think that's one of the basic tenets of Montessori method, isn't it?
Dr. Montessori began her professional life not as an educator, but as a doctor of medicine, and then studied philosophy, psychology and anthropology. As a doctor, Dr. Montessori came to believe that many of the problems of the children she was working with were educational rather than medical. In examining education, she felt that children were not achieving their full potential because the wider education system didn't offer or understand the needs of the child. It was not based upon science. Through her observations, she came to believe that the child's education should proceed in such a way as to provide an environment in which the spontaneous activity of the child would be left free to manifest itself. Children teach themselves. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was no radio and no television, so news spread slowly. This makes it all the more surprising that the news of what Dr. Montessori was doing in her son Lorenzo Children's House went around the world so quickly. This Casa dei Bambini became world famous. The whole child approach is what makes Montessori education unique. The primary goal of the Montessori philosophy is to assist each child reach full potential in all areas of life.
Montessori has basically been a part of my life as long as I can remember. Since about 3 years of age I came to the school, and I went right through up until the equivalent of year 12 in the International Baccalaureate course.
Started when I was 3, 1985, and went right through the IB. I can't really remember anything that wasn't to do with Montessori. It's really...
Okay, I went to a state school until I was year 5, and then I left and I actually went to Montessori school in year 6 and 7, and that was probably the best 2 years of my schooling life. I really enjoyed that, and the freedom, you know, I could do what I wanted, and the teachers just helped me to learn what I wanted to do.
Was this in Perth?
Yeah, just walking distance from my house, which was good. And then that was only primary school, so I went back into state system high school, and I hated that. I was there for 6 months, so I came back here, and I'm really enjoying it. But I think it's a lot better than the state school because you can choose a lot more what you want to learn, and you get a bigger range of knowledge. It's not specialised.
Children who have become masters of their own acts are happy, joyful, calm, and disciplined children.
Just huge individuality, because I just am who I am, and it's really weird when I get out there and meet all my other friends who have been through state schools, and we're so different, but I still get along with just everybody, you know, and I still get along really well with the people I see now from Montessori. And
so you keep in touch?
Oh yeah, well, with the close group of friends that I've had through the IB and my brother's friends, you know, we still get together every week basically. So.
Present-day psychologists say that childhood is an important time for the construction of the future adult. Dr. Montessori pointed out the same thing more than 90 years ago. The child is the potential adult.
I'm coming now for the 3rd time to Australia and to Kingsley. The first time was in 1985, and the second time was 1988, and then there was a long gap, and now I'm here for the 3rd time. And how did that come? Because I met Mrs. Darker in Holland, is that right, in 1982. Okay. Then we met for the first time. We sat together at an International Montessori conference, and we were talking together, and I found out she was a Dutch woman living and working in a Montessori school, her own school in Australia. My mother was a Montessorian. She wanted me to go to a Montessori school, but in the small town or village where I lived in Holland, there was not yet a Montessori school. Later we moved to Amsterdam, but then the distance was too big. So I was not so lucky to go to a Montessori school, as a lot of your children are. But anyway, I got the education. So it was not strange that I chose to become a Montessori teacher and trainer later in my life. When did that happen? That happened during the war years in Holland. I got my diploma in '44 in Holland, in Amsterdam. Anyway, the help. Yeah, give the right help, the help, you know, that's already help for the children to do it themselves. Now, how do you give that help? You need things that they can do something, that they can be active. Apparatus, you could call it. You at home, toys. We call it materials, Montessori materials. And that must be all the things, objects, materials for self-activity, that the child can do it by him or herself. It must also be a child size, not doll size, and not too big. They must handle it, child size. So that depends on the age, what size. These tables are higher and bigger than these there, of course. And for self-activity, that's the word, self, they must do it by themselves, and activity is very important. Because you all know that the knowledge, what we learn, what we have learned, and what is part of us, goes through our hands. We don't learn that way, sitting with a child. You know how from the baby forwards, how the child teaches himself to walk. You can take a baby by the hand, or 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, and say, now you walk. It doesn't come. So the walking comes out of the child. The environment, that's what you offer. The possibility, the freedom to move, to coordinate hand, feet, eye-hand coordination. That you offer the possibility. We call that environment. And giving a child, every person a chance. And the activity, the doing, is very important for the child. Not the result, but what he is doing. For instance, you all know that a little child wants to imitate the parents. 1.5, 2, they see you cleaning the table or the crumbs or whatever we still do with our hands, because there are machines for everything. Dishwashing, they do at school. But in how many households there are no dishwashing machines? Floors you do with a vacuum cleaner. And with a vacuum cleaner with water, everything exists. You can do the walls with a water vacuum cleaner, or how you call it. So these are things, when they still see it, they want to imitate. So then you give the child also a sponge, and also a brush, and also a bucket, and the child size, not like that, it's not like that, of course. And then the child does it. And what must you, because I do this now very short, I just say a little bit, what must you have then? Patience, please, patience. Because we do it quickly. We do that, oh, the table is clean, ready, hop, away. Fortunately, now I can read or see the television. But for the child, that is marvelous to do that. Do it over and over again. Some parents get very worried. They also hear these stories from school. In my school, it was not my school, I worked in a school. Then the parents would come to me and say, when my child comes home, and I ask him, what did you do? And you know, as a nice parent, you ask, what did you do today? Oh, I polished the brass. Does my child really polish only brass here at school? And don't you have cleaners? Or do you still have brass in the school? Yes, it does. And then you try to explain it was a child activity. The child liked to do it. And then the parents get maybe frightened. My child would be a beautiful brass polisher in society, but what else? So that kind of thing. And so that's also the patience. And for the child, the outcome, the effect, the result is not important. For us it's beautiful when it shines. A 6-year-old also already, 5-year-old also. But 2.5, 3, 4 that begins, it's the shining, it's the activity. And then they ask you to, then comes the result. Another thing is, what you can learn to observe, what we call the sensitive periods. Now you can say it also very simple. The child chooses something, he's driven by an inner drive, he's going to choose that. Let me stay with polish. Why does the child choose that polish? Because he needs it to practice his muscles, motor activity, we call it, his hand-eye coordination, that movement, that being busy with that. He can also do that with sweeping the floor, or with a sponge, Another child has an inner drive to be busy with language. You know, every child around 2 years old, and it's in the whole world the same. Whether you go to the North Pole, to the Netherlands, or here to Australia, more or less, it's always the same time, these sensitive periods, but never the same day. You can never say my child is, my child will never speak or talk, because my neighbor's child does already ta-ta-ta and chuk-chuk-chuk, go mama. No, that is different, but within certain limits, within certain times. So that we call the sensitive periods, and we give freedom for that, because that's an inner drive. We can also say that's the child's motivation. He's not yet motivated like we are with our brains and things like that, but that's an inner drive. He just has to do it. And when the child can work that way, then it gives him an enormous feeling of self-respect. He has done something on his own. He finished it. You know, help me to do it by myself. So you gave the opportunity, call it freedom, is a beautiful word. You gave things to do something, objects, at home, whatever, at school we have other things. And you also gave the environment that it was possible for him. Now I lifted glass, I think, yes, we also give glass. Glass can break, but in the households, fortunately, there is still glass. Not everything is plastic. So things can break, because in an only plastic world, nothing, yes, plastic can break when it's old, that's right. But that would be terrible, of course. And the child could bump into anything, could drop everything, you know, then he doesn't master his movements. Oh, that goes also very far in Montessori education. That a person who can handle his body, who can master his body, that kind of thing. So you also give glass to handle, and they love to carry that in the right way, to handle all these things. The environment must be invitating to do something. When a room at home is too beautiful, I mean beautiful is very good of course, but when it is crowded with little things, then don't put a 1.5-year-old in it, because of course things will drop down. Then it's wiser to put some things away. On the other hand, young children can be very careful with things, and also with each other. And things must also be in good order, because here and in every Montessori school you try to make the environment so orderly as you can, and so good in order, and proper and clean, and also in their room or in their wherever, that they find it in order. Because if they choose something and take it out, it must be put in the same place. Now, the result is that a child is happy through his own development. So that's the individual development. And through his own growth. And then you see that the child can grow, can develop, and socialize, can become a member of a group. Not because we teach it, but he grows into it by first fulfilling his own development, as in his own growth. And first they are a member of a very small society, which is your family. Then the bigger society is the classroom, the group here. Still bigger is the IB. And then they grow out into the society of the grown-ups. That's the real society in which we are living in, from what we are members. And for that social aim of Montessori, that ideal, I choose Montessori education. To study it with children and with students, with parents, with teachers, and with directors, as we call the teachers from the Montessori schools. And for that Montessori education which I choose, and that also means education, as Montessori puts it in her books, for a better world, for a world and for peace. And it's for me a very happy experience to meet people like you, parents, teachers, at the other end of the globe, as I feel it, from my country, to work towards the same aim for the benefit and happiness of your children.
The business world today is changing faster than ever before, and in this environment learning has never been a bigger part of the workday. By enabling our youth to teach themselves, they will be better prepared for our ever-changing world.
Oh yeah, we bought a car, me and Dad, and built the motor and stuff, sold it to me.
And then I think the wonderful thing about Ian is that he's been surrounded by Sally and I, who have both gone to university and both study, and he's been completely happy to go off and do his mechanic thing and says to us, oh, when are you two going to get in the real world? And yeah, he's got so much confidence and he's happy doing what he's doing, and he's not been daunted by Sally and I and what we're doing at all, and I think he's got a lot of that confidence from being allowed to develop what he wanted to do here at Montessori.
Some people assume that everything will come right if we have better school buildings. Others, if we have smaller classes. Some lay a great significance on mental tests and examinations. Some are urging the return to the cane, to discipline the undisciplined. All this and similar efforts to improve our situation do not get down to the root of the matter. It lies in the establishment of a new and better relationship between the two great sections of all societies, children and adults. The child is the pole of humanity. The child is the producer. The child has a constructive part to play in the building up of civilization, just as important, if not more so, than that played by the adult. The work is nothing less than that of creating the adult that is to be. As Dr. Montessori herself said,
humanity, neglected in its formative period, grows up as a menace to its own survival.
you.